blood flows through it, how it does its job. So, bit of a background right here, where we are in the Anna Garcia case, right? In addition to looking at the nervous system and looking at like the brain histology and the brain MRI images and cross-sectional images like we did in 124, the medical examiner has also performed an examination of the other major organs, including Anna's lungs, liver, kidneys, etc., and determined that they all appear normal. During this step, what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at the heart. So it's kind of like the last thing we need to do that we haven't yet done in the autopsy. So the cardiovascular system, we're going to talk a little bit about that and then talk about the heart in more detail. The cardiovascular system consists of the heart, which includes 4 chambers, 2 of which are called the atria, singular is atrium. Those are the upper chambers of the heart. There's like 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Those top 2 are the atria. There's the left atrium and the right atrium. We'll talk about those more in a little bit. And then there are the ventricles, which are the lower chambers. And in between the chambers and also leading into some of the major blood vessels are valves. And those valves are really important because they prevent blood from flowing back the wrong direction. So the valves make sure that blood only moves in one direction. They can't go backwards, and we don't have backflow. Backflow through a valve is really bad. Then there are your blood vessels. There are arteries, which are large, muscular, thick blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart, and veins, which are also large vessels, but are not as thick and muscly, and they carry blood back to the heart. This is how we determine the difference between arteries and veins. It's an anatomical difference based on the structure and the function of them. Often, students kind of learn arteries are red on the diagrams. That's because they have oxygenated blood, and veins are blue on the diagrams, right? Just like you see here. And that means that they have deoxygenated blood. And that is true most of the time, but that is not the difference between arteries and veins. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, and they have to be large and muscular in order to withstand the blood pressure from the heart, and that muscle helps move blood through the arteries. They've got smooth muscle within them. And then veins carry blood back to the heart. And they do not have the same kind of blood pressure within them, so they're much thinner. The walls of veins are much thinner, and they have valves in them to make sure the blood doesn't go the wrong way. That's the difference between arteries and veins. You can remember it by thinking artery away. Artery and away both start with A, right? Artery away from the heart. Because as we're going to see, when it comes to one particular type of circulation involving the lungs, that whole oxygenated, deoxygenated rule doesn't apply, okay? So it's not because of whether there's oxygen or not. It has to do with which way the blood is traveling and the actual structure of those blood vessels. Then you have capillaries, and these are the small little vessels where nutrient exchange occurs, where you actually have like oxygen leave the blood and go to the tissues, and carbon dioxide and other waste products leave the tissues and go into the blood. And then some other terms you might see are arterioles and venules. Arterioles and venules are just smaller arteries and smaller veins. And we'll come back to that on the last slide we're going to cover today. All right, so the path of blood, this is something you're going to want to know. You're going to want to be familiar with the path of blood. At the end of your dissection, I'm going to ask you to walk me through it. So you do need to know this, and you need to study your dissected heart at the end to make sure that you know the path of blood overview. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with blood that's in the body and needs to come back to the heart. So step number 1 over here is systemic circulation. This is blood that has already gone out to the tissues. It's already dropped off nutrients. It's already picked up waste products. Blood, yeah, I'm talking about the heart, buddy. You want to see?
Huh?
Okay, you can learn along with all the kids at home. Well, they're not at home. Well, some of them might be. They might be at school. They might be at home. All right, so blood that's going to come back to the body, it's out there in what's called systemic circulation. It's going to like the various organ systems, right? So it's systemic. And it's going to get back to the heart through the veins, and all the veins are going to lead to one of 2 major blood vessels, the superior vena cava, which is this one up here, or the inferior vena cava, which is this one down here. Superior vena cava brings blood back to your heart from your head and your brain and your arms and your upper body. And the inferior brings it back from like your legs and your toes and all your organs in your abdomen.
Bones come from your legs.
Bones come from your legs? Well, you do have bones in your legs. Yeah, you got bones all throughout your body. Even your head. You got big skull. Those are bones that surround your brain. All right. So the vena cava, right, there's 2 of them, superior and inferior. They bring blood back to the right atrium right here. Now notice this right atrium is on the left side of the diagram, and that's because you're looking at an anterior view or a front view of the heart. So just like how this is my right hand and this is my left hand, same thing for this diagram. And I'm always going to give you an anterior view on any like tests or quizzes or that sort of thing. I'm not going to trick you and be like, oh, here's a posterior view. Okay, just know that the right side of the heart is going to be on the left side of your diagrams. The left side of your heart is going to be on the right side of the diagrams. We're always going to do an anterior view.
Like, whoop.
All right, so from the right atrium, blood's going to flow down into the right ventricle, which is this larger lower chamber. And as it does so, it's going to pass through the tricuspid valve. So the tricuspid valve separates those two chambers from each other, and it prevents blood from flowing backward from the right ventricle into the right atrium. Now, when the ventricle pumps, the right ventricle is going to pump blood up past this valve, called the pulmonary valve, and into the pulmonary artery, which splits and then goes to the right and the left to go to your right and left lung. Pulmonary, whenever you see the word pulmonary, that refers to the lungs, okay? So that's how that deoxygenated, colored in blue in our diagrams, blood is going to go to the lungs. And then once it goes to the lungs and it does gas exchange, right, in pulmonary circulation here in step number 8, it's going to drop off that carbon dioxide, it's going to pick up oxygen, and it's going to come back to the heart through these blood vessels over here and over here. Those are the pulmonary veins. Now you'll notice the pulmonary artery is colored blue. The pulmonary veins are colored red. This is that exception I was talking about, okay? So here's an example of arteries that are carrying deoxygenated blood and veins that are carrying oxygenated blood. And that's because of which direction the blood is flowing. Artery away from the heart, veins return to the heart. All right, those pulmonary veins are going to bring blood back to our left atrium.
I want to count them.
You want to count what?
Like those.
Hold on, how about at the end? We'll come back to it, okay? When we're done. You can come back and count them. All right, so oxygenated blood is now in the left atrium. It's going to receive blood from the lungs, and then it's going to send the blood down into the left ventricle, which is the largest, strongest, meatiest chamber of the heart. And in order to get there, it's going to have to pass through the mitral valve. The mitral is also called the bicuspid valve. You'll see both of those names sometimes, mitral or bicuspid. Bicuspid means two flaps, and tricuspid, which was over here, means three flaps. So these valves are made up of these different flaps that open. Bicuspid has two, tricuspid has three. The way I remember that the tricuspid is on the right is because tri has an R in it, and bicuspid doesn't. But mitral does, so that's super helpful. But that's how I remember. I remember tricuspid, tri has an R, so it's on the right side. Bicuspid doesn't, so it's on the left. But mitral does have an L, so there's that. I don't know, a variety of ways you can remember that. So the left ventricle then is going to pump blood out the aorta, and it's going to have to go past the aortic valve in order to get there. So once again, the aortic valve is going to prevent blood from flowing back from the aorta into the left ventricle, just like all the other three valves do, right? Preventing that backflow. And the aorta, of course, is the largest artery in the body, and all the other arteries and arterioles are going to split off the aorta and take blood to the various parts of the body. And then we're at systemic circulation, and we're back where we started. Cool?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. All right. So here's a little animation to show that happening. So you can watch how the valves open and close, right? So as blood flows through the valves, right, they open, and then when the ventricles pump here, these valves will close, and these valves will open up here to let blood out into the pulmonary artery and the aorta. Cool? So the atria, they pump together, and then the ventricles go. So atria, then ventricles, atria, then ventricles. You can watch those valves open and close, open and close. And it's really important these valves open and close fully, or else you can have a variety of heart issues, health issues due to valve defects, valve malfunction. All right. So systemic circulation, a little bit about those arteries, capillaries, etc. So just what's happening in systemic circulation. Well, the aorta, of course, is the first major blood vessel, that first big artery that blood is going to be flowing through out to the body. And it's going to branch into all the different arteries of the body. And then off of those arteries that you see here in this diagram, okay, you have your arterioles, which are these smaller arteries that lead to the capillaries. And so the capillaries is where you see the color change from red to blue. And that is just indicating that the blood is dropping off its nutrients, including oxygen, and picking up waste products like carbon dioxide and other things, and coming to the veins. And But to get to the veins, they have to go through these venules. Venules are the smaller veins that that
count
carry blood
those,
away from the
like,
capillaries.
false ones.
You want to count everything. I know counting is so
1,
fun.
2, 3.
Okay. All right. So something to be aware of, just so you are aware. In diagrams, we often like color our blood vessels red and blue and that sort of thing, and that might make you think that deoxygenated blood is blue. It's not. There is a bit of a color difference though. Oxygenated blood is a brighter red, but deoxygenated blood is still red. It's just a darker red that's like maybe like closer to a purplish shade, but it's not blue. We just use red and blue on our diagrams. You are so noisy. These kids aren't going to be able to hear me when I'm watching their video. All right, Dominic, can you say bye? Can you look at the camera and say bye?
Bye.
Bye.